Hi, Linda. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, yes, I can.
Okay, we are live.
Okay, thank you.
Greetings, Dr. Seaton. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are live. We are streaming on YouTube. Greetings, Dr. Rogers. Can you hear me okay? Okay, your mute's on still.
Yep, I hear you just fine.
Perfect. Brian, you can hear and see okay?
Hello?
Can you hear okay?
I don't think he can hear you.
Brian, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, Brian?
I can.
Okay. I think we're good. We are live. So
Hello, Dr. Seaton.
Hello, Dr. Rogers. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. It's a pleasure to see you.
You too.
President Cox, good to see you, sir. And
anybody else we're expecting?
yes,
Oh,
we're
okay.
anticipating Dr. Langdon.
Okay, I've got Doug on and I've got Nicole joining. Okay, Nicole, can you hear me okay?
I can, Greg, thank you.
Perfect. And Doug, you can hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, we are live and we're streaming.
Wonderful. All right. President Cox, we are anticipating Trustee Langdon. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't we give a couple more minutes, and Ms. Berman, would you please call Dr. Langdon and see if there's anything we can do to help her get engaged here?
Yes, I just texted her. I will call her now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I see Doug is at the ocean, which looks amazing. Ryan, you are in the weeds. My allergies are acting up just looking at that. And you've
Okay,
got,
Dr. Landon looks like she's joining us. Hang on.
oh, okay, great. All right, Dr. Langdon. We can't hear you just yet, but it's great to see you.
Made it.
All right, great to see you.
Thank you. Sorry, Monday noon, tough.
Totally get it. So this is the first budget committee meeting, and I'm going to give the floor to President Cox, and I believe our main facilitator is actually going to be Ms. Parker, but we'll start off with you, President Cox, to kick it off.
I'll just call the meeting, the committee meeting to order and turn it over to you.
Okay. Then the first order of business will be to call the roll. And I'll go ahead and do that, Ms. Parker, this time, and then next time you can do it, okay? Dr. Langdon.
Present.
President Cox.
Sure.
Okay, we definitely have a quorum. The committee members are present. And the agenda was posted and tells us we're having a meeting from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And we open with the May revision budget impact. And Linda, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and give the floor to you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to go ahead and begin today's meeting by providing some information that will help hopefully guide our conversation regarding budget today. Governor Newsom's May revision proposals bear little resemblance to his January state budget when the administration projected a multi-billion-dollar surplus in a $222 billion spending plan. While May revisions are usually built upon actual personal income tax receipts and stable economic projections, both are missing this year. The big three taxes make up nearly 77% of state general fund revenue: personal income tax, sales tax, and corporation tax. Personal income tax alone accounts for 2/3 of the state's general fund revenue, making it the largest source of state revenue. Deferral of income tax payments coupled with the near shutdown of the economy is driving this steep decline in revenues at the state level. Local educational agencies, such as Merced City School District, are primarily funded through a calculation called the Local Control Funding Formula. LCFF accounts for approximately 82% of our general fund revenue. The LCFF takes into consideration additional costs to educate students based on their needs, such as foster and homeless youth, English learners, and students from low-income families. Governor Newsom's May revision suspends the 2.31% statutory COLA and includes an additional reduction for a total of a 10% cut to the LCFF. This equates to approximately $12 million for Merced City School District compared to what was projected for 2021 in January. Though the cuts are meant to reduce the base grant, they do in turn lower the amount upon which supplemental and concentration grant funding is calculated. LCFF funding is currently projected to remain flat for the 2 subsequent years, meaning no projected statutory COLA, despite the fact that the district's operational costs do continue to increase. Governor Newsom's proposal language also states that these reductions could be triggered off if the federal government provides sufficient funding to backfill the cuts. However, this will likely remain unknown until after the June adoption. The May revision also includes cash deferrals for June 2020 and April, May, and June 2021. While this avoids an additional cut in state revenues to schools, it pushes the administrative and financial burden of borrowing cash to local school agencies. Protecting district reserves and reducing costs to the extent possible is a prudent measure to help mitigate the impact to the district's budget and cash balance. Merced City School District remains committed to offering great services for a high-quality education to students despite this financial challenge. The May revision is the last set of data points the district receives before local budget adoption takes place. Therefore, the 2021 budget is being developed based on factors provided, such as the 10% reduction to the LCFF, again equating to approximately $12 million for MCSD as compared to what was projected in January. The one-time buy-down of STRS and PERS employer rates for 2021 and 21-22, offering the district some relief in that respect. The flexibility to exclude the state's on behalf of employer payments in the routine restricted maintenance account calculation, and implementation of level 1 austerity measures, such as a hiring freeze, elimination of non-essential or redundant expenditures, a freeze on site allocations for the current 19-20 fiscal year, and the transfer and reassignment of certificated staff on special assignment to current open vacancies to reduce ongoing costs. The adoption of the 2021 state budget at the end of June and potential August revision will better define assumptions to be used for the MCSD 2021 budget and multi-year projections. These revisions will be incorporated with the first interim budget report provided in December. At this time, I'd like to provide you with a brief overview of the draft general fund summary for 2021, as well as the multi-year projection. Let me see if I can open this. Can everyone see the spreadsheet there on your screen? Okay. So starting with the general fund, you'll see that Merced City School District is projected to receive approximately $128 million in revenue here at the top, but is expected to expend approximately $131 million in revenue. That leads to this deficit of approximately $3.8 million in 2021 that still remains after those level 1 measures have been implemented. You can also see here the impact to our ending fund balance, as well as the components of the ending fund balance. This includes approximately a 15% reserve for economic uncertainties, which would help weather the next 2 years subsequent to 2021, a restricted balance of approximately 1.2 million, and assignments of approximately 28 million, which are further broken down here. So the assignments listed here in this draft document are a follow-up to some of the strategic recommendations made in the superintendent's report to the board in early May. And I'll go ahead and pause here and see if there are any questions so far from anyone. I know that's quite a bit of information. No? Dr. Langdon, what's there?
Well, I have a couple questions, but I want you to talk. Are you going to talk more about the assigned or no?
We can. Did you want to ask some specific questions or?
Well, I guess how you talked about that we'll be getting some relief from things like buying down stirs and purs. How much? Like, what is that? Do we know? Is that calculated anywhere, or we're just like hoping for that, or what does that statement mean?
I have already incorporated those projected savings in the budget.
Okay.
So it did equate to, I can pull that exact number for you, but I believe it equated to approximately $1.5 million for the district between the two, the stirs and purs buy down. So that is already incorporated.
You've incorporated. Got it. Okay.
I have pending further information.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then the austerity measures are all, you've calculated all of that in. And if those don't need to be implemented, I hear you saying, I'm confirming that I understand that won't really truly be understood until first interim, which is in December.
We will certainly know more once the state adopts their budget. So we do expect them to pass a budget on June 15th by the constitutional deadline. However, we do know that Governor Newsom has until June 30th to approve that budget. And there is a time where he has the option between June 15th and June 30th to either veto the entire budget, make line item reductions. So we will have more information from the state by the end of June. However, because of the unique circumstances surrounding this year, in that personal income taxes have been deferred to July 15th, we do know that the state will have to revisit their own budget in August and potentially make a revision depending on how their projections are looking with respect to actual revenues received.
So we'll be getting more information at the end of June, which is soon, right? And then we'll be getting more information in August again, before December. Like, this is going to slowly unroll as we get the tax information. So he'll make some new declarative statements in August.
We anticipate we will know more in August from the state as to whether or not a revision will be necessary with their own budget. By that time, the state will also likely know if the federal funding is going to materialize. I believe they expect to know that by the 1st of September. And we will also have a better idea as to how our own district will be closing, what our ending fund balance will actually be for 1920, as we'll be working on the unaudited actuals.
Do you have any insights or can spell out that federal funding, whatever it is, opportunity or promises or what we can expect?
I don't know yet too many specifics with respect to the HEROES Act, which is the federal funding that they're hoping will materialize. Governor Newsom has proposed that if it does materialize, it will be pushed out to districts in a certain way. And then the
Right.
legislature is proposing a different form of allocation. So that's another one of these unknowns at this time as to if it will materialize, to what amount, and how it will be made available to districts and how it may be used. So
It is my understanding of that there's a governor's version and there's a legislative opportunity to influence, but either way we will come out of that with either what sounds like our fair share or more, right? Because there aren't they sort of toggling back and forth between how much the districts get who have low income kids, right, and students who have special needs, and our percentage is relatively high in the area, right?
that's correct. A district such as ours will, if the funding does materialize, we will likely benefit from it in some way. It's just to what extent, because that will depend on the allocation method. So
Thanks, that's helpful.
were there any other questions at this time, or? No? Okay. Then I will move on to a quick overview of the draft multi-year projection. Let me see if I can get that on the screen. Okay, so what you're seeing here is a broad overview of what the multi-year projection currently looks like. So on the far left column, you have the 2019-20 estimated actuals, so where we are currently. Then you have 2021 budget, 21-22, and then 22-23. So a side-by-side comparison of the general fund over the next 3 years. And what this shows is that we are projecting relatively flat funding with respect to revenues, because that statutory COLA is not currently being proposed in any of the 3 years. Yet down here, you do see that the expenditures do continue to rise, having this ongoing impact to our fund balance. Let me scroll down a bit here. And what this equates to is that the financial imbalance does result in deficit spending of $3.8 million in year 1, as I had mentioned. It equates to approximately $4.9 million in year 2, and then $7.3 million in year 3. So these year-over-year decreases do quickly deplete the district's reserves for economic uncertainty, which could lead to fiscal vulnerability. And I'll pause there if there's any questions, or if anyone else wanted to speak to that. No questions. Seeing none at this time. Okay. Let me go ahead and go back to the slides. Oops. This next slide, these pie charts represent an at-a-glance view of the revenue and expenditure breakdown for Fund 1, which is our general fund. And as you can see on the pie chart on the left, the LCFF accounts for the majority of the Merced City School District's funding at approximately 82%, with the remainder being comprised of federal, other state, and other local revenues. And on the right, with respect to expenditures, you can see that salaries and benefits total approximately 85% of the budget, and the remainder is primarily comprised of supplies and services budgets. At this time, we would welcome some feedback from the board regarding core commitments and values and guidance in identifying some non-negotiables, so to speak, as we continue with the budget development process.
Could I just ask a quick question just for clarification? I'm assuming, I would just want to make sure this is a true assumption, that most districts are about 85% people, right? Is that a pretty typical expenditure
Yes,
percentage? I mean, we're not doing anything more or less than any other district.
it is pretty typical to be in that range.
That's what we have. We have people and they use a couple chunks of money for supplies, but in general, this is about funding our people.
Correct. That is where the majority is spent.
And we're not out of line with other environments.
No.
You know what I can say though, Dr. Langdon, is that this budget is, while it's in draft form, it's extraordinary that the board has a path that allows it to keep the organizational integrity, avoiding things like layoffs and so forth. And yes, it's true, we're projecting deficit spending, but we are able to keep people employed, so to speak, while also keeping students and staff safe. And we are projecting ways to improve our service and support of students and their teachers. So there's some pretty good creative work going on here to realize the board's expectations and goals.
Thank you.
Okay, so you need some discussion from us so that we can kind of flush this out, yeah?
Yes, we would appreciate that if there's anything you guys would like to share with us.
Well, I know that times are strange, even more so, I think, since the legislature, and I think it's notable that both houses of the legislature, how quickly they came together on a plan that they presented to the governor. So I guess the way that I'm kind of feeling is, I would rather us lean more a little towards the legislature's thoughts where, the feds are going to have to come in with a bailout and then cuts will be triggered, rather than the governor's budget, which is, in my opinion, it's reversed. Here's the cuts and we'll restore it if later. I want us to be able to carry out our core academic mission, without any layoffs. I would prefer not to lay off, any individuals, and use other cost saving tactics to fill in the gap as necessary. But I would like to have a little bit of discussion about the teacher librarians in particular. And I think in my mind, the teacher librarians and the TSAs are just two separate groups for now. And so what, Dr. Rogers, what is the plan if things are a little bit rosier than what we're planning for?
I think that just to round out the picture, you're referencing the reassignment of the teacher librarians to the classroom in vacant certificated positions, rather than filling them with external applicants due to the fiscal shortfalls that we're anticipating, and as part of the austerity measures. And then the question becomes, if funding comes through, would we automatically restore those teacher librarians to their previous positions? And the answer is I can't commit to that. I can't speculate that that is the guaranteed response. I can say that assigning the teacher librarians, while I have learned, um, I've learned that they make important contributions already, supporting our teachers and supporting all of our staff in the instructional program. Putting them in the classroom is also an effective move. These are extraordinarily talented individuals, and having them directly in service to kids is a very strategic step that we can take as an organization. I can also say that we make these changes, President Cox and Dr. Langdon, knowing that our performance patterns we've been seeing haven't been great. And we have been directed by the board to take some extraordinary steps if need be to change the trajectory of our students, raising the academic performance. So that's why I'm saying I'm not rushing to commit to restoring the teacher librarians to the positions we've reassigned them. I do anticipate, without committing to it, I do anticipate a role for teacher librarians and others as our master teachers, as our lead teachers in the teacher academy. We are renewing our efforts in teacher training and support, both for distance learning and other literacy initiative practices, where I think that the teacher librarians will probably serve an essential role. I don't know exactly what that looks like, except that we are launching this academy and we are anticipating launching it this fall. And it will include teachers, our teachers, training other teachers and supporting them in the new instructional design. So it's a long-winded answer to say, we're not committing to restoring them if the funding comes through, but we do anticipate a huge role for teacher librarians in the design moving forward.
Okay. You know, some of the other things that I had been really looking forward to talking about when we brought Dr. Rogers on board earlier this year, you know, I really wanted to discuss things like, you know, summer school, the TSAs, you know, some other things that COVID has gone and shoved out the window for us. So unfortunately, taking any discussion really out of it on how we deliver things. So, you know, I just that those were some of my particular interests, those big ticket items that you know, we've been spending, you know, $500,000 here, $1 million there every year without real evaluation of whether they're effective versus the amount being invested. Dr. Langdon, do you have anything?
Well, yeah, we've talked about this again in what I've come to call the before times, right? We were talking about these, and again, my questions were, these are big ticket items, and I would like to see the educational outcomes. I would like to know the impact of these, whether they're staffing assignments for these teachers on special assignment. Can we, you know, what are we demonstrating that these programs are doing to increase our literacy with our children, right? I mean, that's what it's supposed to always be about. And so we've talked about these things, and then I think what was hard was this series of very quickly falling dominoes that happened, that these things kind of got put on an austerity measure list without a lot of discussion because of a variety of deadlines that I'm becoming aware of now. But I feel like what I would like to have happen is in these decisions that are made, that we are constantly talking and toggling back and forth with the people who are, you know, in the classroom with these children. What, you know, what did we learn about that not, ideal? Nobody had a lot of forethought and planning. Our move to remote learning, we did that very quickly. We did that because we had to. And so, I'm learning that the teacher librarians in some cases were the person who provided a ton of technical support to families. Well, if there is need for technical support, we need to know that, and we might be able to provide that in other ways. I don't want us to realize gaps because we weren't really sure what everybody was doing in these roles. And I say that because I have asked a couple times in my time on the board for more information about these roles and not gotten a lot. And now I'm getting emails from people telling me how important their job is, and I'm all of a sudden learning a ton that I wish we could have known before. And I wish we could have discussed more, with more time and more intention. But I get that these are really unprecedented times. So I hear the austerity measures are important, but I'd almost like us to go through them and say, these are, if the federal funding comes through, whatever package ends up getting dropped on us, we know we're having conversations about what we would do with that. So it's not, again, one of these hurry up and wait and hurry up and wait. So we have a plan, and then we get this chunk of money, and then we have to frantically disperse it in a period of time, and we're unprepared. So I feel like any way we can be more intentional, I think we should try, even if it's having 3 or 4 or 5 scenarios that never come to fruition. Those are conversations I think we should be having, or plans that I think we should see and maybe rank or prioritize them. So, I want the literacy priority to be first and foremost. And I don't know if that I want to hear that that's really happening, and maybe I need to hear more about the different kinds of instructional things you're hinting about, so that we feel confident that at the end of the day, kids are really getting what they come to school for, which is hopefully to learn to read. And then once you can read, then you can really learn, right? So I'm not sure if I said anything helpful.
If I may, Dr. Langdon, let's see. Linda, take me back, if you would please, to, let's see, what slide was that showed us, well, let's see, we had a listing of, actually, maybe it wasn't just, maybe it was one of the spreadsheets that showed us some of the programs that were, yeah, in fact, it was. Keep going. There we go. Okay. So this is part of the proposed budget that responds to the shortfalls that we are anticipating, and but it also highlights the board's priorities and goals. So these programs are specifically designed and aligned to the board's plans. For example, you'll see, I think it's the 4th item down. There's actually quite a bit that's aligned to the instructional program, but there's a district-wide AVID implementation. And then right below that, there is a teacher academy. And then there's an equity academy that's farther down. And then there's another piece, the science, literacy, and math, excuse me, math initiative. Those are all targeting teacher support, classroom investment, parent outreach, and engagement. And so we anticipate, those are the largest elements of the budget, and they're all about the experience that our students, teachers, and families have in this work. So in terms of the board's priorities, you've been very, very clear that you want to see an increase in literacy. You want to see an increase in the quality of support our teachers get. And certainly you want to see improved outcomes and engagement for our students. So with Avid, you'll find wall to wall throughout the district. You'll see consistent practices and very robust teacher training and support. But when you add to that the teacher academy, that's what I was saying, where I anticipate teacher librarians who have really carried a lot of those kinds of responsibilities along with the teachers on special assignment. I anticipate a role for them moving forward. It's just framed in a very focused way, and we'll see a renewed investment in professional learning communities that give teachers the chance to collaborate together on their classroom practice, as well as learning new instructional methodologies, such as the work that we're doing with distance learning. And then you see farther down the issue of science, literacy, and math initiative. We're working on the acronym for that, but I'll leave that to more creative people. But think about STEAM being applied district-wide, maker spaces, and the opportunity for teachers to participate in a community of practice that allows them to unpack those strategies with well-trained mentor teachers, masterful teachers who are masterful at these practices, able to guide them as they expand their practice throughout the district, instead of, or maybe in addition to, the emphasis that we've been placing on the STEAM Center. The board has made it clear that you're interested in expanding our instructional capacity and quality throughout all of our 18 campuses on a daily basis. And you'll see that investment right here in this budget, which is extraordinary given the other kinds of challenges we're confronted with.
So when you say teacher librarians will play a role in that, does that mean that they play that role from a classroom that they've been assigned to, or is that then we have some flexibility and we move them into a different space or position? And maybe that's too far down the line to say, but I hear you say something and I don't know really what that means.
Yeah, I'm not intentionally being vague. So I just don't have a whole lot in the way of details to offer at this stage.
Okay.
It's just that these are extraordinarily talented people. Strategically, we know that the most effective approach is to offer high quality first instruction in the classroom. And we also know that the best interventions and support methods are those that are implemented right there in the classroom, as opposed to an emphasis and investment on the highest quality instruction, or the interventions being something that would be offered outside of the classroom as an ancillary or an add-on service. So we're definitely putting the emphasis on what happens between the teacher and the students in the classroom. I think that teacher librarians being in the classroom is an excellent idea insofar as these are highly trained individuals, and it's going to be a great move to have them there. But the second thing is, it may be that we can adjust teacher schedules, teacher librarians' schedules, or masterful teachers throughout the district, maybe through stipends or other means, can teach in the academy alongside other professional learning experts to offer the training and support that our teachers need. And then this emphasis on professional learning communities and communities of practice, we could find ourselves with site-embedded leaders, mentor teachers, working right alongside their neighbors in the classroom next door that can help us out as we're implementing this new methodology. So we're pretty hopeful in the opportunities in front of us, but I don't have a very clear implementation model to present to the board today.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, so I have two. I think they're probably both big questions. One, I'm interested to know when we are going to see more concrete information, Dr. Rogers, on these 3 new academies. And I guess I'll say the we, not just the board, but I'm sure all of our teachers are very interested as well. So when can we expect to see some solid business plan, for lack of a better term, for these academies? And the second one is, the big piece that I'm kind of seeing missing here. I think that we're doing just fine. I appreciate our staff for, doing, Miss Parker in particular, doing all the homework, crunching the numbers, getting us to where we need to be, and putting together a conservative but still functional budget. That's more than what we had during the Great Recession, from what I remember of those decisions that we had to make. But one big thing that's missing here is what happens when CDE or whomever, the state says, all right, you guys are coming back. You're capping classroom occupancy at 50%. You're going to do shifts, this, that, and the other. I mean, and I realize that you can't create 1,000 different budget scenarios, especially for things that, aren't even literally on paper yet. But, these are things that we still have to kind of be thinking about. So, where is our flexibility for some real drastic changes to how we physically operate?
Okay, there was a lot there, President Cox. Let me kind of tiptoe into this one. The drastic changes, I'm hoping to avoid those. And so you've got in this budget some strategic use of the reserves. While we don't deplete the reserves, we are in deficit spending. The idea here, though, is to cushion the blow to the extent we're able, and still leave the organization strong. So you've got, you can anticipate 3 years of deficit spending and strategic use of the reserves. But again, we're trying to level things out, hold the organization stable. You'll have a detailed business plan on the academies when you're also later this month, when you're going to approve the budget. We'll co-present those items so that you have a strong idea as to what it is you're buying with that budget. The plans will obviously evolve as the financial picture becomes clearer. But I think that we're trying to be as clear as we can about meeting the board's expectations. And so things like use of the reserves would, I think, diminish significantly as those funds are restored from the state and possibly federal governments. But I don't know that you'll see significant changes in program offerings. We were focusing to the extent we were able on the kinds of clear messages we've received from the board in terms of your priorities on literacy and classroom instruction and quality intervention and mental health supports and other wraparound services to ensure the wellness of our youngsters. And those items are in place. So hopefully you won't see any of that changing or go away.
Okay. And Ms. Parker, can you scroll down again to that second page, please? Thank you. And the textbook adoption, the 2.5 million, that is part of the action that we just took, or is this additional?
That would be with the hope that eventually, this is outside of what you had just done. This would potentially be for the future elementary adoption.
Okay.
But is that science?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I know that the libraries are a very, libraries in general are a very important period. Libraries, in our district, I think are very, they have they have a great history, first of all. They're also, people are really, really passionate about them, as I am. I mean, I love to read. And I think one of my concerns that I just want everyone to make sure that we're all on the same page is, even though some of these cuts are having to be made, and in this case, the cuts are moving TLs into the classroom to avoid having to backfill those positions and increase the deficit, right? Notwithstanding that we are still committing to keeping the libraries open for their operating hours with library media technicians or assistants. I can't remember the exact classification, but that there will be adults who can still make sure that door is open and the kids can get into the library. And I know that we've already had that discussion, Dr. Rogers, but if you could just, for the people that might watch the committee meeting later, if you could just reiterate that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, the libraries will stay open, and students will all have access to the libraries. We are not closing those. We're not backing off. I want to emphasize that our teacher librarians do more than just sort of manage the library, and they do an awful lot in terms of supporting the actual instruction. And they have been instrumental, I think, in distance learning, which has been a new endeavor, and teachers have come to rely on teacher librarians for sort of real-time professional learning. How do I make this particular thing work? So the good news is we're going to keep those libraries open for students, and we are going to find ways to continually provide the support that our teachers have relied on from teacher librarians and other sources, TOSAs, teachers on special assignment, and our learning directors and our clinicians and others. We're going to ensure that our classroom teachers do not experience a reduction in the real-time instructional support they have become used to and dependent upon.
Thank you. Going back,
do we have a? I'm sorry. I was
No,
going to
go
go
ahead,
in a different. I was going to go in a little bit different direction.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just. So I think these austerity measures are. I was not on the board during the Great Depression, so I don't know that I'm used to LCFF monies being distributed, and so this is new for me. And I'm and MCSD is not the only place who's experiencing this. Let's be clear. I get this. Like, I think that when people get frustrated that things are happening in our district, this is happening everywhere. So these are unprecedented times, and we need to just really stay anchored on our values while we do this. This is no fun. And I guess the austerity measures, when they impact people, we hear, there are no layoffs, and that people first, and we want to really kind of draw a circle around our current employees and say our commitment is to you, and that's why the unfilled positions go unfilled. We don't invite more people into the circle because we have people inside the district that we are working hard to not lay off and to keep employed. So I hear that, and in the austerity measure, it feels like we're cutting something, when in fact I'm continuing to think we're just moving people around from, one good space to another good space, because we need kids with qualified teachers who can help them recuperate from all of this. So I appreciate the unpacking this. This austerity measure feels the hardest because it involves people. The other austerity measures are, can we look at that list again? Was that something that Ms. Parker put up there? Was there no?
No, I just gave a few examples of some of the
Okay.
level 1 austerity measures that we have already implemented today.
So typically, Dr. Langdon, our austerity measures would be the one you've heard about, which is using existing staff to fill vacancies or leaving vacancies unfilled to the extent we're able, and that is practical. Additionally, a review of all short-term expenditures, contracts, all of those are either frozen or eliminated, again, to the extent we're able. It's doing everything we can to tighten our belts and make the most of the assets we have in place without acquiring new stuff and or services.
Okay. So I think that what I'm kind of hearing from Dr. Langdon and I think that we're both very supportive. And part of our recommendation as a committee to the board, I think we're very supportive that one of our non-negotiables right now is no layoffs, right? And I think that we are trying to make the best of a bad situation. You know, I'm sure Dr. Langdon has. I know I've gotten a couple emails, you know, telling me how hypocritical it is for us to promote literacy and then move TLs. But you know, I guess the alternative is we have librarians and massive class sizes. So you know, there's only so much of the pie. And so I think one of the non-negotiables, and Dr. Langdon, please chime in here, is that we are going with a no layoffs until everything else has been exhausted. Right. We are going to continue to maintain our commitment, our primary commitment to literacy. And part of that is going to be through these academies, which Dr. Rogers is proposing. The purpose of these academies is to develop leadership. And Dr. Rogers, please, when I'm done, make sure I get everything right, but to promote leadership, to really support teachers into becoming master teachers who will then be able to help us raise our academic achievement and assist all of those students that they serve. And, you know, we've already kind of gone through a couple of other things. So we've already kind of discussed summer school and where we're at. And that has been, summer school, at least this summer, has been, you know, reimagined, partly because of the COVID crisis. Well, I guess primarily because of the COVID crisis and partly because of, you know, funding. So I think that we definitely want to come back throughout this year and understand how next year's summer academy, what that looks like and how long it looks like and its cost. I also want to circle back around, and I'm sorry if this has already been talked about, but what are, when all is said and done, Dr. Rogers, and these proposed changes are made, how many TSAs will remain on special assignment versus going back into the classroom?
We have one TSA, I believe, that is anticipated to remain, as well as one teacher librarian.
Mhm.
Okay, because we're filling what, like something like 17 positions? Is that, I can't quite recall. So about 17 positions.
That's correct.
So I also want to just chime in here with a non-negotiable. I don't know if it's that, but it's definitely a value that we talked about. We had a great, I thought, kickoff retreat when you arrived, Dr. Rogers, at the beginning of this 2020 year, which, I mean, seriously, who had any idea? So this has been a year, and we're in June. But if we all remember back to February, when not all of us were there, but we had a great conversation about how we were going to really talk, and not just talk, maybe do things differently, so that we did not put up with these gaps, these equity gaps for groups of children. I will never forget when I went to my CSBA training, and they were piloting the California dashboard. It was brand new, no one had seen it, and the CSBA people said, let's pull it up. And I'm sitting next to people, and their dashboard lit up blue and green, and they said, oh, tell us your district, and our dashboard lit up red and orange. And I thought, this isn't okay. And it still is not okay. So I know we talked about this as a board, and we're really clear, and you as a superintendent leader are really clear about our commitment to equity. And I don't know how that's much easier to do in the days of milk and honey, and these aren't those days. But I think that is a driver that has to be at the center of austerity measures and the chunks of money that you have, how we spend those. So embedded in these items that are going to get the funding, these restricted funds, I'm hoping and kind of assuming that there are clear indications that we are talking about equity. We are talking with teachers about equity. We are talking with administrators in these academies about what's going on and what as a district we are doing to serve all of these kids. So I just want to make sure that that gets out there. That is really important. It's important to me. And in that February conversation, I was so encouraged and inspired because it was important to everyone, all of us on the governance team. And I just want that to stay at the center. That's where the literacy focus, I think, comes from, is that if you can't read, you do not have a chance. So that was step one in, we weren't really calling it equity when we were talking about literacy, but I don't want that to go away once we've begun to name this in February, and how we make sure that we do not back away from that at all.
Thank you, Dr. Langton. I really appreciate your and the board's ongoing commitment to equity. Just so we're clear, as it has been articulated by the board consistently, that we have a strong commitment and belief that students thrive as their needs are met. And while we will offer a variation in time and support, we won't offer a variation in terms of our expectations of quality and of what the students can and will do in terms of performance and growth. You've committed to using your reserves strategically to ensure we have wraparound services for all of our students. And there is the heart of equity. You will be able to offer those who need it more, and you'll be able to ensure a consistently high quality experience for all of our youngsters, regardless of the needs they bring with them to this experience, to our classrooms. So I think that you see that in the budget itself. Those are extraordinary services. There's an extraordinary level of investment. By the way, also, I would commend the board and put up as an example your offering of summer school. Not all districts were able to do that or willing to do that. You did that at extraordinary extra expenditure. You've done it for 4 weeks. You've opened it to all comers, and you've offered a program that seeks to address the gaps, the standards and the content that kids did not get when we closed school, as well as give youngsters a leg up on the coming year. And that is done without sort of reimbursements and so forth. So the board is just making that commitment to help even things out. That's part of your commitment to equity. I think that this is a strong step forward, and it does respect your commitments and values.
I'm also hoping that we get the the message out that we have the registration open long enough so that families who are reeling and disoriented, because this time is disorienting. It is hard to know what day of the week it is. It is hard to think about what's next, that we make sure that we don't make some administrative time constraints that don't help our families be able to do summer school, right? Like, it's not happening for a while. I want to make sure that the families who, when they look up in July and say, hey, boy, the end of the school year was rough for everybody. And how do we get to be a part of that program that is going to help us backfill a little bit and prep for what's coming? So I want, if we're planning for 1,500 kids, let's make sure we don't shut that registration down until we get the kids that we really think we can handle. I think that I'm worried that the registration deadlines that I saw and heard are going to keep families from being able to. It's a quick pivot to sign up for that this week, right? So I just want to say that again, that we might have to be flexible to help our families get this resource that we're providing.
Thank you. I believe those registration dates have been extended, and
Great.
and we'll keep on working to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to engage.
And I could be wrong. There could be everybody signed up and we're ready to go. But when I looked at those dates, I thought this is again, it's hard to figure these things out when there's so little coming together as a community and everything is coming digitally, or it's just too easy to miss stuff, and people have a lot going on. So I don't want this to be something people miss and then their child doesn't have access to it. So,
Dr. Rogers, I could add to that if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we extended to the 9th because we knew that the office managers at the schools were available. But by all means, I've had the same worry that you do, Dr. Lang, that we don't want to cut it off. We just want to, so we will devise a plan for where families can call after there are no longer office managers at the school. So, and we'll make sure that communication goes out right after and just keep extending that deadline because we don't want to have a cutoff. The 9th was key because that was the last day that we have staff at the schools for families to contact their local schools, but we'll have an alternative after that date for families and where they can call.
Great. And educate that, push that information out through the meal distribution, through the, everything, websites, everything we've got. That to me needs to be an absolute full court press. That is, we've put all this focus on it, and then for it to not get out there would be a shame. So I appreciate those efforts that, we really use our collaborative partners that we have in place to help to help the families access this, please. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's a whole lot of information that, to go through. We're at 1 o'clock, slightly after 1 o'clock. Dr. Langdon, is there anything else that you want to add?
Well, I do just, I don't know, I wear different hats, and one of the hats I wear, I'm involved in a nonprofit arts board. And we heard a lot of things early on about all of this CARES Act money. And, there were all these myths and rumors and things floating around. And we ended up, getting in the queue. We applied for that. And I have a lot of positive energy focusing on this these federal monies that might be coming our way. And I want us to really not be prepared for that. Like I think that we should anticipate maybe less stringent numbers than we're seeing, and then what are we prepared to do about that? Part of this, and I've said this before, I'm not sure how well we've done this, but we need to spend this year's money on this year's kids. And so if we get money from the feds, that money is designed to help the children whose Classrooms went from, in person to remote, to this gap of period of time where there was nothing, and then this remote education. We need to make sure that we use that money to fill the gaps that we know we have, and the gaps that we can honestly anticipate we're going to have as quickly as possible. So I hope there are some scenarios so we don't miss time. And sometimes the federal money comes with these strange timelines. So we just need to be ready. We need to know what's going to get refunded or what's going to be approved in funding if those commitments come through. Because I'm an optimist. I'm fully anticipating that there is help on the way, and we just need to be ready for it.
Yes. All right. So before we go, I want to circle back around one more time to the academies, because this is, I think in some ways it's a big change for our district. In some ways it's kind of returning to roots of operations past. But I firmly believe, especially working for a large organization myself, that you get the most buy-in when people understand things and they're not surprised with things, and they can hear your logic and they can poke at it. And so what I would really like us to do, because the board saying that we need to increase literacy and just adopting a budget, that doesn't really get anything done. What gets things done is our human capital. What Dr. Langen pointed out, we spend, as most districts do, the vast majority of our budget on our professionals. They need to be able to understand, I think, the direction that we're going. I think that we've kind of been robbed of this opportunity this year because of COVID, right? We haven't had our traditional LCAP forums or things like that. During the Great Recession, we also had forums, and they were basically, we put up a list of things that we were going to be cutting, or that were at least on the chopping block, and people came up for hours at a time, staff, employees, public, to let us know, where their priorities were. And so I would like to see us give our staff a chance to understand in much more depth and detail what the academies are going to be structured like, and what staff can expect when they come back this fall, wherever come back to is, whether hopefully it's not their living rooms, hopefully it's a classroom in one of our campuses. But that's my big request, is that people who understand just have much more buy-in and ownership, and that in turn is the kind of, I think, lifeblood for real academic achievement. So it's a lot of money, Dr. Rogers, and coupled with the AVID, when we throw the district-wide AVID into that, that's a lot of money. And I understand, and I think the board understands, that we are both trying to navigate a completely unexpected fiscal situation while also trying to smartly pivot the way that we teach, because what we're doing right now isn't optimal. Despite the very best efforts of our teachers, they can only do so much with the support that they've received. And so I just want them to understand how you plan on supporting them and strengthening them, and empowering them in their classrooms. I think that's very important. So those are my last comments.
I absolutely concur. I don't need to repeat it. That same page we're on it. The professional development for teachers, for everyone, must, the administrative, what is called the leadership academies, the instructional academies need to be robust, and they need to be really respectful of the experience that these teachers have. I love nothing more than to hear great teachers will be mentoring other teachers. That's where kids win. So let's do that, but let's start talking with people about them, because this is my line I tell college students all the time. In the absence of information, I decide what's true. And so we need to push out information as soon as it is baked enough to present, because I think that as we've talked about it, it gets exciting, but people need to understand it so that they can support it and give their their support of it and their 2 cents to it. So the sooner we start talking about that, the better.
Yeah. All right, anything else?
Well, I think that according to the agenda, we need to just acknowledge that we're moving on. There aren't any public comments that we've received. And Linda, help me, Budget Committee Board recommendation for action.
Sure. So just circling back around to some of what I shared earlier, there are still unknowns, Dr. Langdon, like you just alluded to, with CARES Act funding, HEROES Act funding, where the state will land on their budget, all of that. So pending all of that, we are monitoring these changes at the state level as they do progress, and we will continue to advise the board as these changes do materialize. We just want to reassure you that we are watching and we will keep you informed. You are correct. We agree that we do need to continue working and have plans in place for whatever may come our way in the fall. It is our intention to position you guys as trustees to feel very well informed and confident in representing this budget to your colleagues on June 23rd. So with that, I don't know if you would like to meet again next week, or if the public posting period is sufficient for this June adoption pending further information from the state. If you had any feedback in that area.
I'm not feeling at the moment the need for another separate committee meeting.
Okay.
I feel like we will this come to the board again before? Will there be a discussion piece again before the vote, or no?
The hearing and adoption are currently both scheduled for June 23rd.
Okay, simultaneous meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Then I think that we should be ready for that.
Yeah, and I would welcome comments or questions to be shared. There's quite a few people streaming the committee meeting today, so
good.
I'd encourage them to email in questions or comments for that board meeting or for the next board meeting even. And with a reminder that we are going to continue to meet virtually through June, and then shift over, depending on how things go public health wise, shift over back into at least hybrid in-person meetings.
In August?
Well, I am, yes, we can say in August, but I'll bet you $5 we have a July meeting. So yes. Anything else, Dr. Rogers? And thank you, Ms. Parker.
No, I think that's it, President Cox. Thank you.
Okay, well, then we're going to go ahead and adjourn the committee meeting. And thank you to all the staff on the call. Thank you for all that you've put into this extraordinary budget, unfortunately extraordinary.
Right.
And thank you for everyone watching at home. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks for all the hard work.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
It's okay. Just ended.